Section 7 of The Art of Cookery Made Plain and Easy by Hannah Glasse. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 2, Part 3, Made Dishes. From To Stew a Rump of Beef or Briscuit the French Way. Take a rump of beef, cut it from the bone. Take half a pint of white port and half a pint of bread, a little vinegar, some cloves and mace, half a nutmeg beat fine, some parsley chopped, and all sorts of sweet herbs, a little pepper and salt. Mix the herbs, spice and wine all together. Lay your beef in an earthen pan, put the mixture over it, and let it lay all night. Then take the beef and put it into a deep stew pan with 2 quarts of good gravy, the wine, etc., an onion chopped fine, some carrot, and 2 or 3 bay leaves. You may put in some thick rashers of bacon at the bottom of your pan. Stew it very gently for 5 hours, if 12 pounds, if 8 or 9, 4 hours, and keep the stew pan closed, covered. Then take the meat out and strain the liquor through a sieve. Skim all the fat off. Put it into your stew pan with some truffles and morels, artichoke bottoms blanched and cut in pieces, or some carrots and turnips cut as for haricot of mutton, or a few savoys tied up in quarters and stewed till tender. Boil it up, season it with a little cayenne pepper and salt to your palate. Then put the meat in just to make it hot, dish it up. Garnish with dried sippets or lemon and beetroot. To stew beef gobbets. Get any piece of beef except the leg. Cut it in pieces about the bigness of a pullet's egg. Put them in a stew pan, cover them with water, let them stew, skim them clean, and when they have stewed an hour, take mace, cloves, and whole pepper tied in a muslin rag loose, some celery cut small, put them into the pan with some salt, turnips, and carrots pared and cut in slices, a little parsley, a bundle of sweet herbs, and a large crust of bread. You may put in an ounce of barley or rice if you like it. Cover it close and let it stew till it is tender. Take out the herbs, spices and bread, and have ready fried a French roll cut in 4. Dish up all together and send it to table. Beef royal. Take a sirloin of beef or a large rump, bone it and beat it very well, then lard it with bacon, season it all over with salt, pepper, mace, cloves and nutmeg, all beat fine, some lemon peel cut small, and some sweet herbs. In the meantime, make a strong broth of the bones. Take a piece of butter with a little flour, brown it, put in the beef, keep it turning often till it is brown, then strain the broth. Put all together into a pot, put in a bay leaf, a few truffles and some ox palates cut small. Cover it close and let it stew till it is tender. Take out the beef, skim off all the fat, pour in a pint of claret, some fried oysters, an anchovy and some gherkins shred small. Boil all together, put in the beef to warm, thicken your sauce with a piece of butter rolled in flour or mushroom powder, or butter rolled in flour. Lay your meat in the dish, pour the sauce over it, and send it to table. This may be eaten either hot or cold. A tongue and udder forced. First parboil your tongue and udder. Blanch the tongue and stick it with cloves. As for the udder, you must carefully raise it and fill it with forcemeat made with veal. First wash the inside with the yolk of an egg, then put in the forcemeat, tie the ends close and spit them. Roast them and baste them with butter. When enough, have good gravy in the dish and sweet sauce in a cup. Note, for variety, you may lard the udder. To fricassee neat's tongues brown. Take neat's tongues, Boil them tender, peel them, cut them into thin slices and fry them in fresh butter. Then pour out the butter, put in as much gravy as you shall want for sauce, a bundle of sweet herbs, an onion, some pepper and salt, and a blade or two of mace, a glass of white wine. Simmer all together half an hour. Then take out your tongue, strain the gravy, put it with the tongue in the stew pan again, beat up the yolks of 2 eggs, a little grated nutmeg, a piece of butter as big as a walnut rolled in flour. Shake all together for 4 or 5 minutes. Dish it up and send it to table. To force a tongue. Boil it till it is tender. Let it stand till it is cold, then cut a hole at the root end of it, take out some of the meat, chop it with as much beef suet, a few pippins, some pepper and salt, a little mace beat, some nutmeg, a few sweet herbs, and the yolks of 2 eggs. Beat all together well in a marble mortar. Stuff it, cover the end with a veal caul or buttered paper, roast it, baste it with butter and dish it up. Have for sauce good gravy, a little melted butter, the juice of an orange or lemon, and some grated nutmeg. Boil it up and pour it into the dish. To stew neat's tongues whole. Take 2 tongues, let them stew in water just to cover them for 2 hours, then peel them, put them in again with a pint of strong gravy, half a pint of white wine, a bundle of sweet herbs, a little pepper and salt, some mace, cloves, and whole pepper tied in a muslin rag, a spoonful of capers chopped, turnips and carrots sliced, and a piece of butter rolled in flour. Let all stew together very softly over a slow fire for 2 hours. Then take out the spice and sweet herbs, and send it to table. You may leave out the turnips and carrots, or boil them by themselves and lay them in a dish, just as you like. To ragout ox palates. Take 4 ox palates and boil them very tender. Clean them well. Cut some in square pieces and some long. Take and make a rich coulis thus. Put a piece of butter in your stew pan and melt it. Put a large spoonful of flour to it. Stir it well till it is smooth. Then put a quart of good gravy to it. Chop 3 shallots and put in a gill of Lisbon. Cut some lean ham very fine and put in. Also half a lemon. Boil them 20 minutes, then strain it through a sieve, put it into your pan, and the palates, with some forcemeat balls, truffles and morels, pickled or fresh mushrooms stewed in gravy. Season with pepper and salt to your liking, and toss them up 5 or 6 minutes, then dish them up. Garnish with lemon or beetroot. To fricassee ox palates. After boiling your palates very tender, which you must do by setting them on in cold water and letting them do softly, then blanch and scrape them clean. Take mace, nutmeg, cloves and pepper beat fine. Rub them all over with those and with crumbs of bread. Have ready some butter in a stew pan, and when it is hot, put in the palates. Fry them brown on both sides, then pour out the fat and put to them some mutton or beef gravy, enough for sauce, an anchovy, a little nutmeg, a little piece of butter rolled in flour, and the juice of a lemon. Let it simmer all together for 1/4 of an hour. Dish it up and garnish with lemon. To roast ox palates. Having boiled your palates tender, blanch them, cut them into slices about 2 inches long, lard half with bacon, then have ready 2 or 3 pigeons and 2 or 3 chicken peepers. Draw them, truss them, and fill them with forcemeat. Let half of them be nicely larded. Spit them on a bird spit, thus: a bird, a palate, a sage leaf, and a piece of bacon, and so on. A bird, a palate, a sage leaf, and a piece of bacon. Take cockscombs and lambstones, parboiled and blanched. Lard them with little bits of bacon, large oysters parboiled, and each one larded with one piece of bacon. Put these on a skewer, with a little piece of bacon and a sage leaf between them. Tie them on a spit and roast them. Then beat up the yolks of 3 eggs, some nutmeg, a little salt, and crumbs of bread. Baste them with these all the time they are roasting, and have ready 2 sweetbreads, each cut in 2, some artichoke bottoms cut into 4 and fried, and then rub the dish with shallots. Lay the birds in the middle, piled upon one another, and lay the other things all separate by themselves round about in the dish. Have ready for sauce a pint of good gravy, a quarter of a pint of red wine, an anchovy, the oyster liquor, a piece of butter rolled in flour. Boil all these together and pour into the dish with a little juice of lemon. Garnish your dish with lemon. To dress a leg of mutton à la royale. Having taken off all the fat, skin and shank bone, lard it with bacon, season it with pepper and salt, and a round piece of about 3 or 4 pounds of beef or leg of veal. Lard it, have ready some hog's lard boiling, flour your meat, and give it a colour in the lard. Then take the meat out and put it into a pot, with a bundle of sweet herbs, some parsley, an onion stuck with cloves, 2 or 3 blades of mace, some whole pepper, and 3 quarts of gravy. Cover it close and let it boil very softly for 2 hours. Meanwhile, get ready a sweetbread split, cut into 4 and broiled, a few truffles and morels stewed in a quarter of a pint of strong gravy, a glass of red wine, a few mushrooms, 2 spoonfuls of ketchup, and some asparagus tops. Boil all these together, then lay the mutton in the middle of the dish. Cut the beef or veal into slices, make a rim round your mutton with the slices, and pour the ragout over it. When you have taken the meat out of the pot, skim all the fat off the gravy, strain it, and add as much to the other as will fill the dish. Garnish with lemon. A leg of mutton à la oat-gout. Let it hang a fortnight in an airy place, then have ready some cloves of garlic, and stuff it all over. Rub it with pepper and salt, roast it, have ready some good gravy and red wine in the dish, and send it to table. To roast a leg of mutton with oysters. Take a leg of about 2 or 3 days killed, stuff it all over with oysters, and roast it. Garnish with horseradish. To roast a leg of mutton with cockles. Stuff it all over with cockles and roast it. Garnish with horseradish. A shoulder of mutton en epigramme. Roast it almost enough, then very carefully take off the skin about the thickness of a crown piece, and the shank bone with it at the end. Then season that skin and shank bone with pepper and salt, a little lemon peel cut small, and a few sweet herbs and crumbs of bread. Then lay this on the gridiron, and let it be of a fine brown. In the meantime, take the rest of the meat and cut it like a hash about the bigness of a shilling. Save the gravy and put to it, with a few spoonfuls of strong gravy, half an onion cut fine, a little nutmeg, a little pepper and salt, a little bundle of sweet herbs, some gherkins cut very small, a few mushrooms, 2 or 3 truffles cut small, 2 spoonfuls of wine, either red or white, and throw a little flour over the meat. Let all these stew together very softly for 5 or 6 minutes, but be sure it does not boil. Take out the sweet herbs and put the hash into the dish, lay the broiled upon it, and send it to table. A haricot of mutton. Take a neck or loin of mutton, cut it into thick chops, flour them, and fry them brown in a little butter. Take them out and lay them to drain on a sieve. Then put them into a stew pan and cover them with gravy. Put in a whole onion and a turnip or 2, and stew them till tender. Then take out the chops, strain the liquor through a sieve and skim off all the fat. Put a little butter in the stew pan and melt it with a spoonful of flour. Stir it well till it is smooth. Then put the liquor in and stir it well all the time you are pouring it, or it will be in lumps. Put in your chops and a glass of Lisbon. Have ready some carrot about 3/4 of an inch long and cut round with an apple corer, some turnips cut with a turnip scoop, a dozen small onions, all blanched well. Put them to your meat and season with pepper and salt. Stew them very gently for 15 minutes. Then take out the chops with a fork, lay them in your dish and pour the ragout over it. Garnish with beetroot. To French a hind saddle of mutton. It is the 2 chumps of the loins. Cut off the rump and carefully lift up the skin with a knife. Begin at the broad end, but be sure you do not crack it nor take it quite off. Then take some slices of ham or bacon chopped fine, a few truffles, some young onions, some parsley, a little thyme, sweet marjoram, winter savoury, a little lemon peel, all chopped fine, a little mace and 2 or 3 cloves beat fine, half a nutmeg and a little pepper and salt. Mix all together and throw over the meat where you took off the skin. Then lay on the skin again and fasten it with 2 fine skewers at each side and roll it in well buttered paper. It will take 2 hours roasting. Then take off the paper, baste the meat, strew it all over with crumbs of bread, and when it is of a fine brown, take it up. For sauce, take 6 large shallots, cut them very fine, put them into a saucepan with 2 spoonfuls of vinegar and 2 of white wine. Boil them for a minute or 2. Pour it into the dish and garnish with horseradish. Another French way, called Sainte-Menehould. Take the hind part of a chine of mutton, take off the skin, lard it with bacon, season it with pepper, salt, mace, cloves beat, and nutmeg, sweet herbs, young onions and parsley, all chopped fine. Take a large oval or a large gravy pan, lay layers of bacon and then layers of beef all over the bottom. Lay in the mutton, then lay layers of bacon on the mutton, and then a layer of beef. Put in a pint of wine, and as much good gravy as will stew it. Put in a bay leaf and 2 or 3 shallots. Cover it close, put fire over and under it if you have a close pan, and let it stand stewing for 2 hours. When done, take it out, strew crumbs of bread all over it, and put it into the oven to brown. Strain the gravy it was stewed in, and boil it till there is just enough for sauce. Lay the mutton into a dish, pour the sauce in, and serve it up. You must brown it before a fire if you have not an oven. Cutlets à la Maintenon, a very good dish. Take a neck of mutton, cut it into chops. In every chop must be a long bone. Take the fat off the bone and scrape it clean. Have some breadcrumbs, parsley, marjoram, thyme, winter savoury and basil, all chopped fine. Grate some nutmeg on it, some pepper and salt. Mix these all together, melt a little butter in a stew pan, dip the chop in the butter, then roll them in the herbs and put them in half sheets of buttered paper. Leave the end of the bone bare, then broil them on a clear fire for 20 minutes. Send them up in the paper with Pomeroy sauce in a boat, made thus. Chop 4 shallots fine, put them in half a gill of gravy, a little pepper and salt, and a spoonful of vinegar. Boil them up 1 minute, then put it in your boat. To make a mutton hash. Cut your mutton in little bits as thin as you can. Strew a little flour over it. Have ready some gravy, enough for sauce, wherein sweet herbs, onion, pepper and salt have been boiled. Strain it, put in your meat with a little piece of butter rolled in flour, and a little salt, a shallot cut fine, a few capers and gherkins chopped fine. Toss all together for a minute or two. Have ready some bread toasted and cut into thin sippets. Lay them round the dish and pour in your hash. Garnish your dish with pickles and horseradish. Note: some love a glass of red wine or walnut pickle. You may put just what you will into a hash. If the sippets are toasted, it is better. To dress pig's pettitoes. Put your pettitoes into a saucepan with half a pint of water, a blade of mace, a little whole pepper, a bundle of sweet herbs, and an onion. Let them boil 5 minutes, then take out the liver, lights, and heart, mince them very fine. Grate a little nutmeg over them and shake a little flour on them. Let the feet do till they are tender. Then take them out and strain the liquor. Put all together with a little salt and a piece of butter as big as a walnut. Shake the saucepan often. Let it simmer 5 or 6 minutes. Then cut some toasted sippets and lay round the dish. Lay the mincemeat and sauce in the middle and the pettitoes split round it. You may add the juice of half a lemon or a very little vinegar. A second way to roast a leg of mutton with oysters. Stuff a leg of mutton with mutton suet, salt, pepper, nutmeg, and the yolks of eggs. Then roast it, stick it all over with cloves, and when it is about half done, cut off some of the underside of the fleshy end in little bits. Put these into a pipkin with a pint of oysters, liquor and all, a little salt and mace, and half a pint of hot water. Stew them till half the liquor is wasted, then put in a piece of butter rolled in flour, shake all together, and when the mutton is enough, take it up. Pour this sauce over it and send it to table. To dress a leg of mutton to eat like venison. Take a hind quarter of mutton and cut the leg in the shape of a haunch of venison. Save the blood of the sheep and steep it for 5 or 6 hours. Then take it out and roll it in 3 or 4 sheets of white paper, well buttered on the inside. Tie it with a pack thread and roast it, basting it with good beef dripping or butter. It will take 2 hours at a good fire, for your mutton must be fat and thick. About 5 or 6 minutes before you take it up, take off the paper, baste it with a piece of butter, and shake a little flour over it to make it have a fine froth. And then have a little good drawn gravy in a basin and sweet sauce in another. Do not garnish with anything. To dress mutton the Turkish way. First cut your meat into thin slices, then wash it in vinegar and put it into a pot or saucepan that has a close cover to it. Put in some rice, whole pepper, and 3 or 4 whole onions. Let all these stew together, skimming it frequently. When it is enough, take out the onions and season it with salt to your palate. Lay the mutton in a dish and pour the rice and liquor over it. Note: the neck or leg are the best joints to dress this way. Put into a leg 4 quarts of water and 1/4 pound of rice. To a neck, 2 quarts of water and 2 ounces of rice. To every pound of meat, allow 1/4 hour, being close covered. If you put in a blade or 2 of mace and a bundle of sweet herbs, it will be a great addition. When it is just enough, put in a piece of butter and take care the rice do not burn to the pot. In all these things you should lay skewers at the bottom of the pot to lay your meat on, that it may not stick. A shoulder of mutton with a ragout of turnips. Take a shoulder of mutton, get the blade bone taken out as neat as possible, and in the place put a ragout, done thus. Take 1 or 2 sweetbreads, some coxcombs, half an ounce of truffles, some mushrooms, a blade or 2 of mace, a little pepper and salt. Stew all these in 1/4 pint of good gravy, and thicken it with a piece of butter rolled in flour, or yolks of eggs, which you please. Let it be cold before you put it in, and fill up the place where you took the bone out just in the form it was before, and sew it up tight. Take a large deep stew pan, or one of the round deep copper pans with 2 handles. Lay at the bottom thin slices of bacon, then slices of veal, a bundle of parsley, thyme and sweet herbs, some whole pepper, a blade or 2 of mace, 3 or 4 cloves, a large onion, and put in just thin gravy enough to cover the meat. Cover it close and let it stew 2 hours. Then take 8 or 10 turnips, pare them and cut them into what shape you please. Put them into boiling water and let them be just enough. Throw them into a sieve to drain, over the hot water that they may keep warm. Then take up the mutton, drain it from the fat, lay it in a dish and keep it hot covered. Strain the gravy it was stewed in and take off all the fat. Put in a little salt, a glass of white wine, 2 spoonfuls of ketchup and a piece of butter rolled in flour. Boil them together till there is just enough for sauce. Then put in the turnips, give them a boil up, pour them over the meat and send it to table. You may fry the turnips of a light brown and toss them up with the sauce, but that is according to your palate. Note, for a change you may leave out the turnips and add a bunch of celery cut and washed clean, and stewed in a very little water till it is quite tender and the water almost boiled away. Pour the gravy, as before directed, into it, and boil it up till the sauce is good, or you may leave both these out and add truffles, morels, fresh and pickled mushrooms, and artichoke bottoms. Note well, a shoulder of veal without the knuckle, half roasted very quick and brown, and then done like the mutton, eats well. Do not garnish your mutton, but garnish your veal with lemon. To stuff a leg or shoulder of mutton. Take a little grated bread, some beef suet, the yolks of hard eggs, 3 anchovies, a bit of onion, some pepper and salt, a little thyme and winter savoury, 12 oysters and some nutmeg grated. Mix all these together, shred them very fine, work them up with raw eggs like a paste. Stuff your mutton under the skin in the thickest place, or where you please, and roast it. For sauce, take some of the oyster liquor, some claret, 1 anchovy, a little nutmeg, a bit of onion, and a few oysters. Stew all these together, then take out your onion, pour sauce under your mutton, and send it to table. Garnish with horseradish. Oxford John. Keep a leg of mutton till it is stale. Cut it into thin collops, and take out all the sinews and fat. Season them with pepper and salt, a little beaten mace, and strew among them a little shred parsley, thyme, and 3 or 4 shallots. Put about 1/4 pound of butter in a stew pan, and make it hot. Put all your collops in, keep them stirring with a wooden spoon till they are 3 parts done, and then add a pint of gravy, a little juice of lemon, and thicken it with butter rolled in flour. Let them simmer 4 or 5 minutes, and they will be enough. Take care you do not let them boil, nor have them ready before you want them, for they will grow hard. Fry some bread sippets, and throw over and round them, and send them up hot. Mutton rump à la braise. Take 6 mutton rumps and boil them for 15 minutes in water. Take them out, cut them in 2, and put them into a stew pan with half a pint of good gravy, a gill of white wine, an onion stuck with cloves, a little salt, and cayenne pepper. Cover them close and stew them till tender. Take them out and the onion. Skim off all the fat. Thicken the gravy with a little butter rolled in flour, a spoonful of browning, the juice of half a lemon. Boil it up till it is smooth, but not too thick. Put in your rumps, give them a toss or 2, Dish them up hot. Garnish with horseradish and beetroot. For variety, you may leave the rumps whole, and lard 6 kidneys on one side and do them the same as the rumps, only not boil them, and put the rumps in the middle of the dish, the kidneys round them, with sauce over all. The kidneys make a pretty side dish of themselves. Sheep's rumps with rice. Take 6 rumps, put them into a stew pan with some mutton gravy enough to fill it. Stew them about half an hour. Take them up and let them stand to cool. Then put into the liquor 1/4 pound of rice, an onion stuck with cloves, and a blade or 2 of mace. Let it boil till the rice is as thick as a pudding, but take care it do not stick to the bottom, which you must do by stirring it often. In the meantime, take a clean stew pan, put a piece of butter into it, dip your rumps in the yolks of eggs beat, and then in crumbs of bread, with a little nutmeg, lemon peel, and a very little thyme in it. Fry them in the butter of a fine brown, then take them out, lay them in a dish to drain, pour out all the fat, and toss the rice into that pan. Stir it all together for a minute or 2, then lay the rice into the dish and the rumps all round upon the rice. Have ready 4 eggs boiled hard, cut them into quarters, lay them around the dish with fried parsley between them, and send it to table. End of section 7.